When Lionel Richie closes his eyes and drifts back to the earliest chambers of memory, he finds himself in a sandbox. It's preschool in Tuskegee, Alabama, long before fame or music or heartbreak, before the world expanded beyond the bubble. He remembers the feel of the sand between his fingers, the freedom of play, the first glimpse of imagination. The other side, a place in his mind where he could go to create, to escape. That sandbox, he realizes later, was the first rehearsal for his life's calling, turning imagination into music. Tuskegee, Alabama, is where all of Lionel's senses are rooted: the thickness of the humid air, the long summers that bled into autumn, the changing rhythm of the seasons that taught him patience and endurance. Summer meant yard work with his father, cutting grass and trimming hedges under the southern sun, the smell of gasoline and cut greenery filling the air. His father, 6'3", firm and charismatic, always taught by example. "Pay attention," he would say, laying a heavy hand on his son's shoulder. He called him Skeet, a nickname that began as a playful scat song: Skibo, Skibu, Skeeter, and stuck forever. Each morning, without fail, his father's booming tenor filled the house with "Danny Boy," sung over and over as he shaved. It wasn't even his favorite song; he preferred Count Basie and Duke Ellington, but the act of singing seemed to charge his mornings, to declare presence and control. His parents, Alberta and Lionel Richie Sr., built a home filled with sound, laughter, and discipline. Alberta, elegant and precise, was a teacher and later a principal. Lionel Sr. was a proud insurance man and former World War II officer. Between them, they formed the yin and yang that would define Lionel's worldview: his mother's refinement and grace on one side, his father's wit and raw survival instinct on the other. Their gray house with white trim sat across from the president's residence at Tuskegee Institute. It was surrounded by honeysuckle and mint, smells that Lionel can still conjure instantly. His mother made iced mint tea, peach cobbler, blackberry pie, fried chicken, cornbread, greens, yams, and macaroni and cheese, meals that spoke of abundance, love, and order. Dinner was at 5:30 sharp every evening, a ritual as sacred as church. Around that table, the family discussed current events and community gossip, and Lionel absorbed lessons in the art of conversation, irony, and survival. His grandmother, Adelaide Foster, loomed as a matriarchal legend. A trained pianist from Fisk University, she had dreamed of becoming a concert performer at a time when such ambitions for a black woman were nearly unthinkable. She taught music at Tuskegee Institute and played organ at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. Her circle included icons like Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, and her sense of propriety infused every corner of the household. Lionel's grandfather, once a successful grocer, had lost his fortune in the crash of 1929, but the family's cultural wealth endured. In their home, intellect and art were not luxuries, they were obligations. If his grandmother represented decorum and pedigree, his father represented rebellion and grit. Lionel Sr. had survived the hypocrisy of Jim Crow America after fighting in World War II. He had worn the uniform of an officer but returned to a world that denied him dignity and the basic rights of citizenship. Like many black veterans, he faced a system that barred him from loans, education, and recognition. Yet he survived through humor, sharp, irreverent, and defiant. At funerals, in barbershops, at the dinner table, he turned tragedy into comedy, the unbearable into the absurd. "You can lose everything but your sense of humor," he told his son. "If you lose that, they got you." Lionel's mother represented the opposite pole. Alberta insisted on manners, education, and the rules of civility. She taught her son how to speak with grace and move through the world as if he belonged in every room. His father, meanwhile, taught him how to enter those rooms in the first place. They were, in Lionel's eyes, a perfect balance: the polished teacher and the unfiltered realist, one shaping his mind and the other his courage. As a child, Lionel struggled in school. Reading aloud terrified him, words scrambled themselves on the page. The word dyslexia had not yet entered his vocabulary, so he simply thought he was failing. His mother, always proactive, hired a tutor from Tuskegee Institute, a young woman whose kindness and patience changed him. She told him to calm down so your emotions don't get the best of you. Lionel, still in second grade, fell in love instantly. The tender ache of that crush awakened something permanent, a romantic longing he would later pour into lyrics: "I love you, I miss you, you hurt me when you left me." Though he didn't yet know it, the future songwriter was being formed. Life at home revolved around family, ritual, and rivalry. His sister Deborah, 2 years younger, was both tormentor and protector. When left in his care one Sunday, their play turned into chaos. She teased him until he swung a bat in frustration, accidentally hitting her just as their parents returned home. Deborah milked the drama for all it was worth, securing her image as the innocent one. Yet years later, when Lionel faced a playground bully, Deborah showed up and beat the boy herself. They've had each other's backs ever since. Beneath the comfort of family life lay the quiet tension of the Jim Crow South. The Richie home was part of a self-contained world, Tuskegee's black elite, a community of scholars, professionals, and artists who had built a thriving town despite segregation. But outside the bubble, danger lurked. The Ku Klux Klan's threats were met with quiet vigilance. Children were sent to bed early on nights when the adults knew trouble was near. There were unwritten rules about where one could go, when, and with whom. One day in 1957, Lionel's father invited him on a rare trip outside Tuskegee, a drive to Montgomery. For the 8-year-old boy, it felt like a grand adventure, a glimpse of the wider world. In the city, they stopped at a store, bought supplies, and walked back to the car. On the way, Lionel spotted a water fountain and ran toward it, eager for a drink. He didn't notice the sign above it that said whites only. Moments later, he heard angry voices. A group of white men surrounded his father, hurling slurs, calling him nigger, over and over. Lionel waited for his father to explode, to fight back, to defend their honor. Instead, his father said quietly, "Get in the car, son." They drove home in silence. The boy was confused, disappointed. His hero had stayed silent. The event haunted him for years, until as a teenager he brought it up at the dinner table, accusing his father of being an Uncle Tom. Lionel Sr. turned to him and said, "I had two choices that day, whether to be your father or to be a man. I chose to be your father because I wanted to see you grow up." That single sentence shattered and remade Lionel's understanding of manhood. It revealed what survival meant in the Jim Crow South, that sometimes silence was the price of life. Around him, the civil rights movement was unfolding: Rosa Parks, the Montgomery bus boycott, Martin Luther King Jr., and the battle for desegregation, all taking place within miles of his home. Lionel's family didn't speak of it openly, but history was happening in real time. He began to see the contradictions of the world, the faith he was taught in church and the cruelty he saw in society. The question that rose in his young mind, simple but profound, was this: whose side is God on? One Sunday, he asked his parents about the armed guards standing outside the white Episcopal church downtown. "Our church doesn't have an army," he said. "So does that mean God has an army for them?" His mother gave no answer. That silence, too, became a lesson. Tuskegee, he later realized, was both paradise and paradox, a Garden of Eden for black excellence built within the confines of segregation. The town was full of educated, high-achieving men and women, each proud and polished, their degrees a badge of survival. But beneath the polish was pain, the generational trauma of being told you were less than human, even as you built universities, wrote symphonies, and raised children who dreamed of the stars. His father's humor, his mother's refinement, his grandmother's grace, all were survival tools crafted in response to an unjust world. Even laughter was a form of resistance, a way to claim joy in the face of oppression. From these layers of tenderness and fear, humor and trauma, discipline and imagination, Lionel Richie's spirit was shaped. Tuskegee gave him rhythm, melody, and meaning long before he wrote a song. It gave him the contradictions that would define his music: joy mixed with melancholy, longing with gratitude, romance with pain. It was in that humid Alabama air, in that gray house with white trim, between the laughter of his father and the elegance of his mother, that Lionel learned the balance between survival and grace. He would carry Tuskegee inside him forever: the smell of mint and honeysuckle, the voice of his father singing "Danny Boy," the laughter that masked despair, the lessons whispered across dinner tables, and the memory of that day at the fountain, when silence became love and restraint became strength. Tuskegee was not just a place, it was a state of being, a moral compass, a melody that began in the sandbox and never stopped playing.